Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. FPL Consult here, and today we're going to take a look at my Game Week 32 team selection, which is also my final free hit 32 draft. Now I'm very close to what I'm likely going to go into Game Week 32 with, maybe a few minor tweaks here and there on the deadline stream, but in general the structure is already there. Right, so hopefully you guys enjoy this video, and if you do, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here. So for Game Week 31, very quickly, this is how I did. I brought in two players. I brought in Trent and Grealish. Both of them returned, so I'm really happy with that, especially considering that I took a -4 hit for this. Now the moves were to remove Zuma for Trent and Madison for Grealish. Now Grealish was initially not supposed to be in the team. The plan was always to do Madison to Bruno Fernandes, but obviously Bruno Fernandes blanked and I now have Grealish who returned, so I'm pretty happy with that. Aside from that, in general, I scored 72 points, so if I deduct the -4 hit that I took to bring both Trent and Grealish in, then it would be a total of 68 points, which is still pretty high above the game week average, so it shot me up to 88k in the world. The target of the top 50k is definitely still on. I think I can get there, and especially if I nail the free hit later on, right, then hopefully we can push into the top 50k. So just very quickly, some thoughts on the performances for Game Week 31. Kepa and Raya turned out to be not too much of a difference. Kepa and Raya, both of them conceded, but they also made loads of saves and accumulated bonus points as well. Right, so only 1 point difference between them. I went for Raya. As for the defense, I went for the double Newcastle defense, and obviously Ollie Watkins up front, as you guys can see, scored 16 points, so demolished Newcastle. It was kind of a blip. I think most of us weren't expecting Newcastle to be swept away 3-0 against Aston Villa, right? I wasn't expecting that as well, right? So I started both Trippier and Botman ahead of Shaw and Estupiñán, simply because I felt Estupiñán would concede against Chelsea and Shaw wouldn't start, right? So both those calls were right, but in general, going for Botman as my second defender didn't work out, so 1 point for him, 1 point for Trippier as well. But Trent Alexander-Arnold really came in with the goods here. 2 assists against Leeds, so really great performance from him. Looking at how he's taking out the positions in the midfield now, it remains to be seen how it will impact his attacking threat going forward, but now it seems like he is closer to the strikers, so his assists can come a little bit more naturally, right? I know we are used to seeing him swing in balls from the right side of the field, which is generally where he's the most dangerous, but I think moving forward we will see a little bit more of Trent in the midfield role, and we will get to assess whether this kind of diminishes his attacking threat or not. But for now, Trent, 9 points, even though Liverpool didn't keep a clean sheet, so really happy with his returns. Now, in midfield, Grealish, as I mentioned, returned. He got an assist for the penalty that Haaland, of course, converted. Solly March as well with an assist. Mitoma with a blank, and Saka, I think we definitely have to speak about him. If he had scored that penalty, I think I would be much higher. I think I'd maybe be into the top 70k right now, right? But we can't have everything, right? And having Saka blank here, the way I see it is, if I had gone another way, right? If I had planned my transfers in another route, Bruno Fernandes would be in place of Saka, in which case Bruno Fernandes also blanked. And what I would say is Saka not scoring a lot of points and Bruno blanking throughout this period of time as well that I've had Saka, right? Both these returns kind of cancel each other out in terms of not too much difference between these two players. So I can count myself a little bit lucky that Bruno Fernandes didn't kind of hurt my rank this week, because he had loads of chances. So the way I see it is Saka blanking, a little bit unlucky there, but I am lucky that Bruno Fernandes didn't return as well. So I kind of have everything, right? Hopefully Saka will do something in Game Week 32, because he's likely going to be in my free hit team. Now up front, Ollie Watkins, as we mentioned just now, did really well against Newcastle. Kane blanking against Bournemouth. This is definitely the result that we weren't expecting. And on top of that, Solanke coming off a big haul against Tottenham as well, right? So kudos to those of you guys who went for Solanke, right? Really hauled there, and good returns for those of you guys. Massive differential as well. And then Erling Haaland, who's my captain, didn't even play the full match, only played 45 minutes, and he scored 24, of course, with the captain's armband on, right? So really happy with the team. For those of you guys who went with Liverpool assets like maybe Jota, Gakpo or even Mo Salah and you captain Mo Salah, loads of returns there for those of you guys as well. So really pleased with all the returns in general for the popular players in Game Week 31. And let's now take a look at my free hit team for Game Week 32. So in Game Week 32, the free hit is active and this is how the team is currently looking like. It's 98.8 squad value now and 2.4 million in the bank. So in general, what I would say is that unless you're trying to fit Harry Kane into your team, I think budget shouldn't be an issue anywhere else. Alright, so I've gone with Everson and John Stone as my keepers. Everson on the bench, John Stone as my starting keeper against Everton at home. I think there are three main keepers that we're looking at this week. There's Alisson, Ramsdale, and John Stone. And the thing is, I don't really think that we would want to go for a Liverpool or an Arsenal keeper because it simply limits our options for the outfielders, right? Which is where we would want to put these Liverpool and Arsenal assets, right? So Johnstone is pretty much the next best alternative. I think Crystal Palace have been looking really good under Hodgson as well. Everton also haven't been scoring loads of goals, and at home Crystal Palace, I think you would expect them to keep a clean sheet. I could actually see that game going 0-0 as well, right? So Johnson is the keeper. In defense, I have Trippier, Trent, and Joachim Anderson for now. Trippier and Trent, I think I've kind of decided that I definitely will have both of them. Trippier, not so much for an effective ownership standpoint, but more so for the fact that I think Tottenham are really struggling. Yes, there's the narrative that Son is kind of coming into his own and returning to his best form. But as a team, Tottenham just don't convince me. And at home, Newcastle are really strong, even though they are coming off a little bit of a blip against Aston Villa where they lost 3-0. So I do actually favour Trippier in this game, and that's why I've decided to go with Trippier and without Kane. Right, I could obviously go for the reverse. For those of you guys who do think like Kane will get a goal, you could go without Trippier and you could have Kane in your team. But for me, I kind of favour the home team Newcastle here. So Trippier still in the team. Trent definitely going to be here against Nottingham Forest. Could see him picking up a couple of returns just like he did against Leeds as well. So it's really this third defender spot that I'm having a little bit of an issue finding an ideal player in this position. So for now it's Joachim Anderson, simply because of the reasons that I mentioned just now, that I think Crystal Palace will keep a clean sheet. They're actually the third favourite for this game week to keep a clean sheet, right? But if I decide not to go with Joachim Anderson, there are a couple of options I have on the bench. I have Moreno from Aston Villa, who's picking up loads of good positions in the attacking side of the game, and also he's putting loads of crosses in for Ollie Watkins that we saw against Newcastle as well. So I could start Moreno, but I also have Zuma on the bench. Now, I know Zuma playing Bournemouth away, right? Some of you guys don't really like this pick, may not really like this pick, right? Because Solanke is looking really good. Bournemouth have been putting decent XG as well, right? But I think for me, since I don't really have to have a very strong bench, I think that I really like the look of Zuma if I do have to play him, especially since for those of you guys who know and you've been following me on this channel and my team's journey, you would know that I've had incredible luck with Zuma and I've always got in on his hauls. So I'm not opposed to playing him against Bournemouth. West Ham are actually coming off a 2-2 draw against Arsenal. That could pick their confidence up. Defensively, they didn't look very solid in that game, but against Bournemouth, it is a different game, and West Ham are also kind of fighting the relegation battle a little bit. They need to pick up some wins, and keeping clean sheets is also part of their priorities as well. Same goes for the home team Bournemouth as well, right? So I could have Zuma come in for Anderson. Haven't decided, who starts in my starting 11. But for now, I have Joachim Anderson. It's really this third defender spot that I haven't nailed down. There's a couple of players that I've considered as well, like Gabriel from Arsenal. But I wouldn't want to go for an Arsenal defender because they are leaking a couple of goals here and there. And I do feel like there is a 6-point ceiling for that defender. So in general, I would say that the Arsenal attackers is where I would go for. So once again, this third defender spot is tricky, but for now, it's Joachim Anderson. Now in midfield, there's Cody Gakpo, Salah, Martinelli, and Saka. So there's a double Liverpool midfield and also a double Arsenal midfield. So talking about the Liverpool players first, I think the third Liverpool spot has kind of shifted from a defensive asset in Robertson to Cody Gakpo for a couple of reasons. Aside from the fact that Liverpool have still been leaking a couple of goals here and there, I think Cody Gakpo's minutes has looked slightly more secure, right? And it's simply for me because of the position that he plays. Now I know Jota could also possibly start in game week 32 and Jota looks pretty good as well, right? But for me, Jota plays on the left, right? And Gakpo plays in that false 9 role, right? Where he is replacing Firmino in that position. And if I were to say who is first choice between Gakpo and Firmino, I think you would agree that it's Gakpo who's first choice now. There's nothing to say that he may not be taken off at maybe 70 minutes for Roberto Firmino, right? Every chance that happens again, same against Leeds, right? But by that time, you'd hope that he gets a couple of goals or assists by then, right? Against Nottingham Forest at home, I do think Liverpool score quite a couple of goals there. So simply because of those reasons that I just mentioned, I think Gakpo is safe enough to have in my midfield ahead of a third Liverpool asset in Robertson. Right, so there we go for Cody Gakpo. Salah, of course, I think non-negotiable. He's definitely going to be my captain as well. Talking about the Arsenal assets now, Martinelli and Saka. Now, I've toyed with the idea of removing Saka for a couple of my drafts before leading up to this final draft. Right, Martinelli was always in my drafts, and I think he justifies himself. Right, the number of returns he's been getting recently, one of the better attacking assets for Arsenal at this point. Right, but Saka, I think I've toyed with removing him for maybe Jarrod Bowen. Right, replacing him with maybe Eze, who's on the bench now, right, which I will cover in a little bit. But there's also James Maddison as well, right? When I compare all these assets, right, when I compare Eze, I compare Maddison, I compare Jarrod Bowen to Saka at home at the Emirates, I think Saka is a very different player, right? I think there is a certain amount of confidence that he gets from playing in his home stadium, right? The home crowd kind of gives him that confidence, and on top of that, his numbers at home have looked really good, right? His XG and also his XA are definitely significantly better at home than away, right? So putting the kind of stigma aside that even though the past 3 game weeks in my team he's blanked consistently and I am pretty disappointed with those returns, I kind of want to be objective here and take a look at these assets that I just mentioned. So Eze, Bowen, Maddison, and Saka, and think who's going to return the most points, and I do feel like Saka is still up there, right? Of course, there's potential penalties for him as well, right? It remains to be seen whether he keeps them, of course, but aside from that, I think in general, open play, assists, and goals are definitely in store for him, and Arsenal are actually really high up the odds for the over 2 goals odds by Draft Town, so in general, they are expected to score loads of goals against Southampton, and you wouldn't put it past them. They would want to make a statement, right, after coming off a 2-2 draw at West Ham. So I do think like going forward, most of my drafts leading up to the deadline stream would definitely still have Saka and Martinelli, of course. Right, so let's now take a look at the forward line. So completing the team up front is Ollie Watkins, Gabriel Jesus, and Ivan Toney. Now, Watkins and Jesus have been in all of my free hit 32 drafts since I started building them post Game Week 31 deadline. Both of them are in really good form and they have decent fixtures as well. Southampton at home is great for Jesus. Brentford away is not the worst for Ollie Watkins as well, especially in the form that he's in. You expect him to get a couple of goals. Now, in terms of this Arsenal triple up that we're looking at, Jesus, Martinelli, and Saka, I still think like I prefer this one, right, instead of a couple of other alternatives that I've seen, right? Some have gone with Jesus, Martinelli, and Odegaard, so you drop Saka. I've also seen some drafts with 3 Arsenal midfielders in Odegaard, Martinelli, and Saka, and then dropping Jesus. But the way I see it, I think the explosiveness of Jesus is just what draws me to having him in my team, right? He could just go on spells where he could just easily get 2 goals against Southampton, right? In the way that he plays, I think the positions that he's taking up, he looks the most threatening out of all the Arsenal attackers, if I'm honest, right? So that's the way I see it. And for Ivan Toney, I think this third attacking spot or this third forward spot, it's not confirmed yet. For me, this is also a position that I haven't nailed down. So aside from the Joachim Anderson slot that I've talked about just now, which isn't confirmed, there's also this Ivan Toney spot here. There are a couple of alternatives that I'm considering. There's also Solanke in this position, and if I really want to, I could also try to fit Harry Kane in as well. But as I mentioned, I think for the time being, I'm going to go without Harry Kane, right? And it is likely that I'll continue to go that way because I favor Newcastle. So it really leaves whether Ivan Toney is in this spot or whether Solanke is in this spot as well. Right? And when I compare Eze, right, who's on my bench right now, and whether I can start him instead of Ivan Toney, I think because Toney is on penalties, I still prefer him a little bit more. Solanke is also on penalties as well, which is kind of a reason why I would prefer having either Toney or Solanke instead of Eze, who's on the bench right now. So as of now, budget is not even an issue, right? It's really a straight shootout between Solanke and Toney, and because Toney is playing at home, Brentford, I think they look like a much better outfit at home. In general, they play much better, right? So I do kind of favor Brentford to get at least a goal or two against Aston Villa, which is also why I've kind of left Moreno on the bench and started Joachim Andersen instead, right? So this is where I'm at in terms of my thinking for the Game Week 32 free hit draft, and it is likely that I will still go with this formation and this captain in Salah, but there are a couple of positions that, as I mentioned throughout the video, that may change, namely this Ivan Toney spot and also this Joachim Andersen spot. But aside from that, the other 9 players, I think they're pretty much nailed. Maybe I change a couple of bench players as well, but in general, this is how I will probably go into Game Week 32. Let me know what you guys think of my draft. Should I bring in some players that you guys have in your drafts? Let me know what changes you would make to this team, right? But for now, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please give it a like and also subscribe as well if you are new around here, and I'll catch you in more Game Week 32 content very soon.